Hello, hello, hello. Hey everybody. Today I'll show you how to create a simple contact form using HTML and CSS. The first thing you want to do is you want to create a folder and open it in a text editor of your choice. So I'm going to go to my desktop folder, and then I'm going to create a folder within here. I'm going to name it contact form. I'm going to create it, and then I'm going to open it. Okay, once you have created that folder and have opened it in your text editor of your choice, you want to create two files. The first will be a HTML file. So I'm going to name mine contact. You can name it whatever you want. Just make sure that you end the file name with .html. If you don't, then the machine won't know what language you are coding in. The second file, we will also call it contact, but this time we will give it the extension of css.css. Okay, once you've got those two files created, we'll start with the HTML. So firstly, we will start with doc type. So we want to say doc type HTML. This tells the browser that we are writing HTML5, because we will run this in your browser. And next we want to have to add the HTML tag. That will all of our HTML code will go within the HTML tag. And then we want to create a head tag. All the data that you don't see on your website, such as metadata, links, the title, description, the favicon, all that stuff goes in here. So you don't see it on the actual website, but it is important. And then you also want to create your body tag. Your website's body will go onto here. So in other words, all the things you see on your website goes into here. So let's start off with the head. I want to link my CSS file to my HTML file so that the CSS file can be applied to my HTML file. So we're going to say link, and then we're going to say relationship, REL, and we're going to give it a relationship of style sheet, and then / and close it. And then we're going to give it a href tag with the file path to that file. So contact.css. So this here, if you do this, you will have linked your CSS file to your HTML file. The next thing we're going to do, it isn't really important, but let's do it anyway, is we're going to create a title tag, and we are going to call it contact form. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create an h1 tag, and we're going to type test. H1 is a header tag, so it makes a big font. Okay, so we're going to save it. Make sure to save your file every time you open it or want to see the changes you've made. Make sure to save your file. I just use, on my machine, I use Command S, but on your machine it might be different. So I've saved my file, and then you want to open it. The simple way to open it is just to find it within your local file explorer or finder. So I saved it under desktop within contact form. You want to click on the HTML file. There you go. So now I have the HTML file open, and you can see it is working. And every time I want to see the changes reflect within my browser, I must first save the these files here, and then I must also go here and refresh this browser here. So do keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my text editor, and I'm going to then let's start off with creating the form. So let's get rid of that. That was just a test. We want to start off with the form tag. There you go. And within this form tag, the opening and closing tag, we will have the entire form within this tag. Okay, so let's first add a header, an h1 header, and we can just maybe say contact us. Okay, then I want to add a label. I will explain what a label does now. So we have a for tag, and we're just going to give it a value of name, and we are going to give it a name there too. And then we're going to create an input tag, and inside the input tag I'm going to give it an ID of name and a type of text, and I'm going to give it a name of name, and a placeholder of enter your name. Don't worry if you don't know what all this does at the moment, that I will explain it to you. So this, just keep in mind this for and ID, these for and ID attributes need to match. So their values, this here, needs to match, because this label tag gets linked to this input element. And this is the type of input. So you can have different types of inputs. You will see we'll use two other types of inputs in this tutorial, other than text. Name is mainly used for when the data gets submitted. So you've got some type of reference for what data is being submitted. And then your placeholder is your placeholder within the text box. So we can actually save this, make sure to save it. I can actually use file save, but in future I will be using my keyboard shortcut to save this file. So I'm going to go back to my browser, and I'm going to refresh the page. Look at that, it has been updated appropriately. This is the label tag, this is the h1 element, so the label element, the h1 element, and the input element. As you can see, if I click on this label element, it highlights my input element. That is because I have linked these two together. Remember I said that these have to be the same. They have been linked because they have the same value for the for tag and the ID tag. Anyway, let's continue. Most of the other inputs will be very similar. So the next thing we are going to add is the email input. So we're going to say label, we're going to say email, and then we're going to say, give it a for attribute, just as we did before. We're going to say email, then we are going to create another input tag, and then we're going to create the ID attribute, and remember to match it up with the label, and then we're going to give it a type of email. So this gives you a little bit of verification, it attempts to make sure that a valid email was given by the user. So it doesn't work 100%, but it is better than nothing. So we're going to give it a name of email as well, and we're going to give it a placeholder of let's just say enter your email. Okay, on to the next one. We're going to now create another label. This time it's going to be subject, and then I am going to give it a for tag of subject, and then I am going to create an input, another input. This time it will be a type of text, and we will have an ID of subject, and then we will have a name of text. No, we have a name. Sorry, we will have a name of subject also, and we will have a placeholder of enter the subject. Okay, so we can pause here, go back to our browser and check what it looks like so far. Refresh. Okay, cool. We've got name, email, and subject, and everything looks perfect. Fantastic. We're going to go back to our text editor, and we're going to add 2 more inputs, or 1 more input, but 2 more elements. So we're going to add or 4 more elements if you include the labels. We're going to add another label, and we're going to call this one message. This is for the message, and then we want to go here, and we can give it a for attribute with a value of message. Then we can go down here, and we can create another input, and inside this input we're going to give it a ID of message. Message. And then we are going to give it a type of I apologize, actually we will not be using input for this one. We'll be using text area. So we're going to be using text area. We're going to be giving this one an ID of message, and this element, this HTML element takes some different attributes. It takes an attribute called rows. So rows equals, let's give it 10 maybe, and then columns equals 40. So for rows and columns. I will explain what those do in a moment. Okay, I'm going to give it a name of message, and I'm going to give it a placeholder of enter the message. Cool. Enter the message. Okay, let me actually make this a bit wider so you can see. Perfect. Okay, so what I am going to do next is I'm going to create one last input, the button. So we're going to say input. I'm going to give this one a type of submit. So this is a button that submits a certain form. In this case, we have created a contact form. We're going to give it a value of send. This is the text that will be displayed inside of the button. And I think that is about all we're going to add to I think that's all we're going to add for the HTML. Not a lot. So we're going to save this, save your file, go back to your browser, refresh the page, and there we've got everything we need for now, and we've got the button. Fantastic. Now we can go back to our text editor, and we can go to the CSS. Cool. So we can go to the CSS. The first thing I want to do is style the body. The body is the tag that holds all of the everything you see on this page. This white square will be inside the body. So I'm going to style that part now first. Okay, so we say body, curly braces or curly brackets, whichever terminology you prefer. We're going to give it a background, and we're going to give it background linear gradient with 2 values. We're going to give it we're going to use HSL color codes. These are codes used to define colors of your choice. My preference is to use HSL, so just type as exactly as I do. So you want to say HSL parentheses, then those numbers, and then a comma for the second value. HSL, again, this time it's going to be 295, and then it's going to be 24%, and then it's going to be 11%. These are colors that I have already picked out for this project. Okay, we're now going to give the body a height, a default height of 100 view heights. I believe it stands for view heights. I can't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. Then I'm going to use Flexbox. I'm going to use Flexbox next. And to do that, I need to say display, flex, like that. And now I have activated Flexbox. Flexbox is a positioning styling technique that is built into CSS. So if you don't know how to use Flexbox, there are many great tutorials online and on YouTube. You can go learn it. But for this tutorial, you do not need to learn it. Just follow along. I will explain. So now that we've activated Flexbox, I'm going to use justify content center. And what that does, the justify content center, it will center my content within inside the body horizontally on the x-axis. So if I save this, I come back here and I refresh this page, watch what happens. Okay, so firstly, it is now in the center on the x-axis, but also you can now also see the background, the body. We gave the body a background linear gradient, so it gives these two colors and it smoothly fades them. As you can see, the first color and then the second color. So I think that looks quite nice. Okay, the next thing we're going to give it is we are going to give it we're going to center the form or the contents. We're going to center the contents of body on the y-axis. And to do this, we're going to use align items center. So when I save this, I'll show you what happens now. Let me refresh and look what happens. Now it's centered on the y-axis. So it is now being centered vertically. Next, we're going to give a color of maybe HSL HSL 295. No, we will not be doing that here. I will save this for the form. I think I'll give this to the form. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to use a new CSS selector. This time we are selecting the form. So all the stuff inside here and this I am now going to style. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give the form a background color of HSL 330, 28%, 76%. And then I'm going to give it a color of HSL 295, 24%, 11%. The color refers to many different elements, but in this instance, it refers to the font, the text within the form. So that will be applied soon, and you will see that. Next, we're going to use Flexbox again, this time within the form. So we're going to center it horizontally first. Okay. So I'm going to center it horizontally again on the x-axis, as I already explained. Then I'm going to center it on the y-axis. Then I'm going to, let's quickly save this and see what it looks like. Okay, let's refresh. Look at that, we've given it a background color. All the text has a specific color that I've given it now. and we have centered all the stuff within the form. This like lavender color is the form. This represents the form element, and all the stuff inside the form is here. Okay, now what we're going to do, I think this does not look very good in a row like this, in horizontally. Let's make it vertical. So to do that, we'll be using another thing from Flexbox, and this is called Flex Direction. Okay, Flex Direction. Okay, column. And when I save this, look what happens. If I refresh, now look at that. That looks much better. And now it looks like we're starting to get somewhere. Wouldn't you say so? Okay, the next thing I'm going to use is text align center. So if we save this, and then we go back to our browser and we refresh, look what happens. Not much, because everything was pretty much already centered. But if there is any text that is not centered, then it will be centered. So I just like to add that because it does center all the text itself. So yeah, that's a very nice one. Okay, then what we want to do is we will use the width. We will add width of 400 pixels and a height of 650 pixels. Now this sounds exactly, it is as exactly as it sounds. If I refresh this page, it will now have a width and height that I defined. There you go. Now it's bigger and there's more space. Next, I'm going to give it a border radius, and a border radius smooths the corners of the selected element. So I'm going to give it a border radius of 10 pixels. So it was smoothed by 10 pixels. So if I go back here, you will see, there you go, 10 pixels smoothed on every corner. Okay, then I'm going to give all the font inside of here a font size of 20 pixels. So that will make all the font a little bit bigger. When I refresh, you'll see the font is a little bit bigger. That is better. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give all the fonts inside there a special family, so that you will have by default your you will have your browser default font, but I'm going to specify the font because I think it will make the form look better. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back. I'm going to refresh. Watch the font. There you go. I think that looks better, especially in this case. Okay, that's all we're going to do with the form. Next, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select the header, the H1. So the header is this here. I'm selecting this, and I'm only going to add one style here. I'm going to add a font size of 40 pixels. Okay, when I save that, and I come back and I refresh. Interesting. And maybe it was already 40 pixels. Let me just check. Okay, it was. So that is 40 pixels, it seems. And that looks fine to me. So let's continue. We will now use style the inputs. So every single input tag will be styled here. Every single input tag will be styled here. I'm going to give them all a height of 30 pixels. So if I save that and come back here and refresh this page, you'll see all these inputs will be thicker or taller. There you go. That's looking better. Next, I will go down here and I will select all of the inputs and also the text area. So I can select all of it at once by using a comma to specify that I'm selecting both of them. And all the styles inside here will be applied to both the text area and also all of the inputs. So I have a width I'm going to give them a width of 80% firstly, and this is what that will do. It makes them all the same width. Very nice. Okay, then I am going to give them all a margin bottom of 10 pixels, and I'm going to give them a background color of HSL 2A3 40%, 71%. And then I am going to give them an opacity, basically how see-through they are, the elements, of 0.6, basically 60% relative to their normal opacity, which is usually 100%. Then I'm going to get rid of their border. The border is the border around each input. So this black line around each input, around each white box, is the border. So I'm removing that. And I believe it will make it look more cleaner if I do that. It will make it look cleaner. Okay. And then I will be adding a border radius. And as I mentioned earlier, the border radius will smooth the corners of the boxes or of the rectangles. And then I will give them a padding top of 2 pixels, and this will give the text inside of each rectangle or each box a little bit of space, and in my opinion will make it look better. And then I'm going to give it a padding left of 5 pixels, and then I'm going to give them a font size of 16 pixels. Okay, there you go. That's all we're going to start for these two. I'll then save it, and let's go back here. I'm going to refresh and let's see what it looks like. That's looking much better, much better. We're not all the way there yet, but we're getting somewhere. Okay, then I'm going to go back here, and I am going to add some more styles. So let's first add a input of focus, or when it is focused, and a text area of focus as well. And then I am going to give them both an opacity of 1 and a transform of scale 1.02. Okay, then I'm going to give an outline of none. Okay, so this focus is if I remember correctly, a pseudo selector. It's some type of selector, and what it does is this style here will only be applied when I click on the inputs like this. So as you can see, it does have some styling that the browser applies by default, this blue stuff around the edges. So it does do that by default, but I am now adding my own custom styling instead. So if I refresh this, you will see now. If I click on this, each input will slightly enlarge, which is exactly what I want. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my text editor, and then we're getting near to the end of this file. Okay. Next, I want to select the input with a type of submit. This will specifically select that button, that submit button at the top, and it won't select any other elements at all. So I'm going to give this a background color of HSL 295, 24%, 11%. Then I'm going to give the text within the button a color of HSL 330, 28%, 76%. Then I'll give the button a height of 50 pixels, and I will give the font inside the button a size of 25 pixels. Okay, we're going to save that. Let's go see what it looks like. There's the button. Let's refresh. Look at that, it's much bigger, and I think it looks better. Okay, next I'm going to use another selector, or another kind of like an event, but it is not an event. So I'm going to select the button again, specifically that button and only that button. This time I'm going to add some style only when the cursor or the mouse hovers over the button. So I'm going to make it slightly smaller if the user hovers over the button. So let me go back and show you. If I refresh and I hover over the button, you can see it shrinks a little bit. It shrinks a little bit. And that looks nice, I think. Then I'm going to add another style. This time I'm going to select the button again. And this time I'm going to use another selector. This time I'm going to use the active selector. So the styles inside here will only apply when I click on the button with a mouse. Okay, so I save that, and what it will do is when you hover over it, it will be smaller, and then when you click on it, it will enlarge a little bit. I actually think if we have maybe 1.02, I think that will look better. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our browser, and we're going to go and view it in our browser. We're going to refresh, and if you hover over it, shrinks, and when we click on it, it enlarges again. That is what we wanted. That is good. Okay, then I'm going to go back here, and I am going to create a JavaScript file so that we can see the data that is submitted by the HTML. So that is the end of this tutorial as far as CSS and JavaScript goes, but I will still be showing you how the data is kept and stored. So that is our simple HTML and CSS form, but now we are going to show you the data. So if we go back to our text editor and we create a new file within the same folder, create a new file, and we just call it form, or maybe actually contact.js. Remember, this extension here must be .js because it tells our machine that we are coding in JavaScript now. Okay, next, before we add any JavaScript, we want to go to our HTML, and we want to link our JavaScript and HTML. Okay, so we're going to add a script tag, and then within the script opening tag, we're going to give it a source attribute, and the value of the source attribute will be JavaScript file. Okay, so we're going to give it contact.js. Then I'm going to give it another attribute that is async. This attribute will tell the browser to run this page asynchronously, meaning it will run it from top to bottom in order. Normally, it will run it synchronously. Everything will load at the same time. I'm adding this to ensure that our JavaScript works the way that I want to implement it. We will save this file. We have now linked our JavaScript file to our HTML file. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to grab or select this element. Okay, To do that, we will create a variable called form. It will be equal to document dot query selector parentheses quotation marks form. We have now got that form. Next, I want to say form dot add event listener, and what the event we're going to listen for is submit, and we're going to take that event as an argument. Then I want to do something with that event. Firstly, by default, when you submit a form, the web page will reload. If I say event.prevent default, that will prevent the web page from reloading. Next, I want to display all of the data in the console. All of the data when I click submit. To do this, I will say console.log parentheses backtick, or some people call them template literals. Then I'm going to say name data $, curly braces, event dot target dot, sorry, not dot, but actually square brackets, index of 0 dot value, and then I'm going to add a semicolon. Next, I'm going to select this line and I'm going to paste it. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it 3 more times. So I'm going to paste it 3 more times. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm simply going to change this to email. I'm going to change this to 1 instead of 0. Then I'm going to change this to subject. And then I'm going to change this to 2. Then I'm going to change this to message. And I'm going to change this to 3. Then I'm going to save this file. I'm going to go back to our browser. We're going to refresh, and we have completed the entire project. So if now I fill in the form, okay, so I filled in the form. Next, I'm going to click send. I've done this. Normally, it would have refreshed this page and all of the inputs would be refreshed, cleared out. But because we added the prevent default, it did not refresh the page as planned. Then, if you are on Mac, you can press Command Option I, or if you are on Windows, you can press Control Shift I, and that will open your DevTools. So your DevTools, you want to open your DevTools and you want to go to console, and in console you will see the data that we just submitted when we clicked send. So you can see name data is John Doe, email data is johndoe@gmail.com, subject data is hello, I would like to inquire, and the message data is also this data here. So as you can see, we are getting the data correctly and everything is working. So if you wish, you can use this form in your project to submit data. I also want to note that if you can also open the DevTools by right-clicking and then clicking on Inspect. And that should also open the DevTools. And then just navigate to Console. So, if I now click this again, you will see the data will be submitted again. There you go. We've got a duplicate of the data, and I can do it again and again. The data will be captured every time. If I change it, then it will also reflect my change. As you can see, it's now Jane Doe instead of John Doe. Okay guys, that is all for today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know what you think. I'm not sure if I will be making any more videos, but for now, that's all from me. Maybe I'll catch you guys next time. Cheers.